Have you ever felt that kind of silence that doesn't just echo around you, but within you? The kind that wraps itself around your chest, pressing until it's hard to breathe, not because of what was said, but because of everything that wasn't. There's a silence that feels like absence, and there's a silence that feels like abandonment. And when the silence comes from someone you still love, someone you still hope might turn around, it's not just quiet. It's a storm without thunder. The ache of being ignored isn't just about now. It touches something older, something deeper. That unanswered message, that cold distance. It awakens a part of you that remembers other silences, the ones you endured as a little girl, the nights you waited for a mother's comfort that never came, the days you tried to be perfect, hoping a distant father might finally see you. This isn't just heartbreak, it's a reactivation of an old wound, and that's why it hurts the way it does. Louise Hay taught us, whatever we give out mentally or verbally will come back to us in like form, and when we send out desperation, when we plead or chase or beg for crumbs of affection, we're not just reaching for him. We're feeding a belief that says we're only worthy of love if we fight for it, if we shrink, if we explain, if we wait by the phone for someone who stopped calling. That belief isn't love. That belief is a scar disguised as hope. The most dangerous thing about being ignored is not the absence of response. It's what it triggers inside of you. It's the way it whispers, "You're not enough." And before you know it, you start reacting. You try to justify yourself. You write long messages trying to make him understand. You blame yourself. You search for the right words that might bring him back. But the truth is, every time you explain yourself to someone who chose silence, you're abandoning your own voice. Lise Bourbeau speaks about the wound of rejection, how it drives us to prove we are worthy of being chosen. That wound makes you forget who you are. It turns you into a version of yourself that begs for a seat at a table where you should have been invited with open arms. And here's the deepest truth. The way you respond to his silence could be the turning point. It could be the moment you finally choose to stop proving and start healing. Or it could be the moment you lose yourself a little more. So the real question becomes, what if the way you respond right now isn't about getting him back, but about getting yourself back? What if this silence is not rejection, but redirection? There's a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when your fingers hover over the keyboard. You've rewritten the same message 3, maybe 4 times. You're trying to sound casual, but your heart is trembling. Deep down, it's not about the words. It's about needing to be heard, needing him to respond, because the silence is screaming too loud inside of you. But what we often don't see in these moments is that the message we send isn't just a text. It's a prayer for validation, a cry for connection. And sometimes, it's a way of saying, "Please tell me I still matter." Louise Hay reminds us, you do not have to prove your worth to anyone. Yet here you are, trying to negotiate love with your pain, trying to fix something by chasing someone who's not reaching back. Every time you explain yourself to someone who's already walked away, or worse, to someone who doesn't care to answer, you place your worth in their hands. And those hands are not holding you. That desperate text doesn't bring you closer. It takes you further away from yourself. You might feel like this message will change everything, but what it often does is shift the power entirely. It says, "You get to decide if I'm worthy of being loved." And the soul begins to ache not only from being ignored, but from the slow erosion of self-respect. What started as a message becomes a mirror, showing how far you've drifted from your own center. And if the silence continues after you've sent it, which it often does, the pain deepens, not just because he didn't reply, but because now a part of you feels humiliated, exposed, small. This is the cost of trying to fix something outside, when what really needs healing is within. There's a soft, quiet lie that many of us learn to believe, not from one man, but from the pattern of an entire life, that if we just love hard enough, if we just give a little more, if we show our heart wide open, they'll see us, they'll stay, they'll choose us. But this belief, while tender, can be treacherous, because what often happens is this. You begin offering love not from fullness, but from fear. You send kind words, thoughtful messages, reminders of the good times, all while he is silent, all while he is distant. And in that moment, it feels like love. It feels like loyalty. But underneath it all is abandonment of self. You are no longer expressing love. You are trying to buy attention with your softness, hoping that if he sees how much you care, he will realize what he lost. But here's the truth most hearts don't want to admit. If someone walks away while you're loving them, your deeper task is not to make them return. It's to return to yourself. You may think, but he'll forget me if I don't remind him. Yet real love, the kind that's meant, doesn't need to be begged for. It doesn't need proof. Louise Hay reminds us, you are the only person who thinks in your mind. You are the power and authority in your world. And that world begins to collapse when we place our emotional survival in someone else's absence. Giving love when there is no one truly receiving it is not noble. It is not romantic. It is an echo of an old belief that we must earn affection, prove devotion, show loyalty to be seen. But what if you didn't have to show anything? What if your energy was already sacred, and he simply couldn't meet you there? Maybe it's not that you're not enough. Maybe it's that you've been enough for someone who doesn't know how to receive what's real, and your task is not to teach him. Your task is to remember. It starts with a question that sounds innocent, but cuts deep. Did I do something wrong? A silence from him becomes a story you begin to write, one where you're the reason the conversation ended, the connection faded, the affection stopped. Suddenly, you are both the abandoned and the accused. You play the moments back in your mind. The last message you sent, the tone you used, the way you said goodbye, and every replay becomes a quiet confession to a crime you never committed. That's the shame loop. It convinces you that someone else's withdrawal is a reflection of your value. And so, you search for your faults in his silence. But here's what Lise Bourbeau gently teaches us. The wound of rejection makes us interpret absence as punishment, as if love has to be earned through perfect behavior, flawless words, or self-erasure. You begin to shrink. You begin to apologize for simply existing too much, caring too much, feeling too much. This guilt is a trap dressed as introspection. It makes you believe that if you had been different, he would have stayed, and that belief becomes a chain around your worth. But the truth is, his silence is not your sentence. It's his choice. And your healing begins when you stop taking responsibility for someone else's emotional capacity. Louise Hay reminds us, I am not responsible for other people's actions. I am only responsible for my own thoughts and actions. That reminder is an anchor. When the waves of guilt try to pull you under, you are allowed to care. You are allowed to feel, but you are not required to carry shame for someone else's silence. When you stop asking what you did wrong, you begin to see that the real question isn't about him. It's about why you believed being ignored must mean you failed. And that, dear heart, is where the healing begins. There's a longing that doesn't come from the heart. It comes from the wound. That deep, echoing ache that whispers, if he comes back, maybe I was enough all along. And so, the desire to reconnect isn't just about love. It becomes a mission to redeem your worth, to correct the pain of not being chosen, not being kept. But reconnection, when it's born from pain, is rarely healing. It often becomes a reenactment, trying to rewrite an ending that left you feeling invisible. You're not just hoping for him to return. You're hoping that his return will erase the shame, the doubt, the story that you were never truly loved. This is where so many women lose themselves, in the illusion that getting him back will fix the part of them that cracked when he left. But Louise Hay offers us a deeper truth. I love and approve of myself. Not if he loves me, not when he sees my value, but now, as I am, with or without closure, with or without his return. You are not broken because he left. You are not more whole if he comes back. Redemption is not found in his arms. It's found in your own embrace. When you stop needing him to change the story, you begin writing a new one, where you are no longer the one left behind, but the one who finally came home to herself. The need for closure is valid. The ache for understanding is human. But the peace you seek isn't waiting in his reply. It's waiting in your reflection, in the quiet courage of a woman who chooses herself, even when someone else didn't. There's a quiet exchange that happens when you reach out to someone who's pulled away. It's not just a conversation. It's a transaction. You offer vulnerability, softness, presence, and in return, you hope for reassurance, a sign, a word, anything that makes the silence feel less like rejection. But when that offering is met with nothing, no reply, no energy, no care, something inside begins to unravel. Every time you send a message into that void, every time you explain yourself to someone who isn't truly listening, you pay a price, a little less dignity, a little more self-doubt. A part of you whispers, maybe if I just say the right thing, he'll come back. And another part, quieter still, says, but why do I keep needing to earn what should be given freely? Louise Hay reminds us, I am willing to release the need to be rejected. That's not just a statement. It's a turning point. Because when you stop offering pieces of your soul in exchange for affection, You begin to reclaim something sacred, your silence, your stillness, your own presence. The soul does not thrive on breadcrumbs. It hungers for truth, and sometimes truth is painful. It reveals the ways you've been chasing validation in people who cannot give it, but it also frees you to stop trading your essence for temporary comfort. Real love doesn't need to be negotiated. It doesn't demand that you shrink or bend or bleed just to be seen. And the moment you stop treating love like something you must beg for is the moment you remember that the deepest connection begins not with another, but with the parts of you that you abandoned while waiting. There is a sacred difference between reaching out from love and chasing from fear. One is expansive. The other contracts your spirit. But when you've been ignored, when you've been met with silence instead of presence, it's so easy to forget that difference. The ache becomes louder than your wisdom. You may find yourself thinking, if I just show him how much I care, maybe he'll remember. But care that cost your peace is not care. It's survival. It's the echo of an old pattern, of a girl who thought that if she loved hard enough, she would be loved back. But Louise Hay speaks to that wounded voice within us. I am willing to release the need to be rejected. It sounds simple, almost soft, but it's revolutionary, because it shifts the focus from what you're trying to get to what you're ready to let go. And that shift is where your healing begins. You were not born to chase anyone. You were born to remember your own light. You were born to be whole, even in the face of someone else's absence. And every time you silence your own truth to keep someone close, you're telling the universe, I don't trust that I can be loved just as I am. But you can, and you will. Not when he replies, but when you stop needing his reply to feel real. The journey back to yourself isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's a quiet remembering, a decision to stop bleeding for love, a sacred choice to stop shrinking for someone who doesn't even see the space you're making. Healing doesn't always look like strength. Sometimes it looks like sitting in your own silence and choosing not to fill it with someone who left. Sometimes what hurts isn't just the absence of his words. It's the presence of your own longing. It's the quiet realization that while you've been waiting for him to show up, there's a part of you that stopped showing up for yourself. That's the mirror his silence holds up. And it's a hard one to look into, because when someone pulls away, it reveals more than their distance. It reveals the places where you've abandoned your own needs, your own voice, your own truth. It shows you the moments you silenced your intuition to keep the peace, the times you swallowed your feelings just to stay connected, the nights you stayed, even after you stopped feeling seen. That silence on the outside becomes a magnifying glass, not just for the relationship, but for your own inner landscape. And what it often reflects is this: a hunger to be chosen, a fear of being alone, a deep ache to feel worthy, not just of attention, but of devotion. But here's the truth. What you're seeing isn't about him. It's about where you've lost your own reflection. Louise Hay teaches, I am in the process of positive change. I am unfolding in new, beautiful ways. And maybe his silence is not a punishment, but a pause, a sacred invitation to turn inward, to ask, what part of me needs my own voice right now? Because the woman who learns to listen to herself no longer needs to beg to be heard. You don't need to be louder in someone else's life. You need to be more present in your own. His silence may have started the ache, but your presence, that's what begins the healing. There's a space, sacred, subtle, between the moment something hurts and the moment you respond. It's in that space that power is born. And when a man's silence cuts deep, your first impulse might be to react, to send that message, to ask what happened, to try and fix the rupture with words. But sometimes, the most powerful shift isn't action, it's stillness. Because reaction often comes from fear, from the urgency of not wanting to be forgotten. But reconnection, true reconnection, doesn't come from panic. It comes from presence. And the first connection you must rebuild is the one with yourself. Louise Hay said, I trust the process of life. That's not just an affirmation. It's a decision to pause before pouring your soul into silence again. Instead of reacting, what if you breathed? What if the silence outside became a moment of inner anchoring? Not punishment, but prayer. A breath that says, I exist, even when he's absent. A stillness that whispers, I matter, even without a response. This is not about pretending you don't care. It's about shifting your energy from need to nourishment, from external validation to internal grounding. And yes, it's hard, especially when your heart is loud and your mind is racing. But healing rarely begins with more words. Often, it begins with a sacred pause. So let the silence be your teacher, not your trigger. Let it guide you back into yourself, to the parts of you that forgot their own rhythm while dancing to someone else's absence. Reconnection doesn't require a message. It requires a return, and the first place to return is always you. There's a moment in every woman's life when she mistakes silence for punishment. She thinks, if he's quiet, it must mean I failed. I pushed too hard. I loved too much. I asked for too much. And so she sits with the weight of that imagined sentence, convinced that his withdrawal is a judgment. But what if the silence isn't rejection? What if it's redirection? What if the universe, in its infinite tenderness, is guiding you away from what hurts, even when you're still reaching for it? Louise Hay reminds us, in the infinity of life where I am, all is perfect, whole, and complete. And in that wholeness, there are moments that don't feel perfect, but are sacred in disguise. Silence can be protection, a pause to help you see clearly, a break in the noise so you can finally hear yourself. Because sometimes, when a door closes, it's not slamming shut to punish you. It's sealing itself so you stop trying to enter places that no longer hold the love you seek. The woman who begins to understand this stops chasing what left. She stops trying to decode the silence and starts listening to the quiet truth inside her own chest. She asks, what if this is not the end, but the beginning of me remembering who I am? There is no punishment in becoming more whole. There is only shedding, letting go of stories where you had to earn love, stepping out of loops where you waited to be enough. The woman you're becoming doesn't beg for love. She embodies it, and that changes everything. There is a strength that doesn't shout, a wisdom that doesn't chase, a power that lives in the quiet choice to not react, not out of indifference, but out of reverence for your own energy. This is the feminine power of non-reaction, and it is not weakness. It is self-respect in its most graceful form. When you no longer respond to the silences that once broke you, something shifts. You're no longer waiting to be seen. You are seeing yourself. You're no longer offering explanations to someone who disappeared. You're offering presence to the parts of you that were left behind. This isn't about being cold. It's about being clear. Non-reaction doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you've learned to feel without losing yourself. It means you've grown enough to hold your heart without needing someone else to hold it for you. And in that holding, something beautiful unfolds. The space to choose what honors your peace, to choose what reflects your worth. Louise Hay spoke to this kind of power when she said, I am in harmony with all of life. Because harmony isn't just about getting along with others. It's about aligning with your own truth. And your truth doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It doesn't shrink in the face of someone else's absence. The spiritually mature woman knows this. Space between two people isn't always a problem to solve. Sometimes it's a boundary to honor. Sometimes it's a sacred invitation to return inward. And when she listens to that invitation, she becomes magnetic. Not because she needs to be wanted, but because she radiates self-respect. There comes a moment, often after the tears have dried and the phone has stayed silent a little too long, when you realize that this pain is an invitation not to win him back, but to meet yourself in a deeper way. Because when the silence hurts, it's rarely just about him. It's about the parts of you that still believe love must be earned through suffering. Louise Hay, in her eternal wisdom, said, in the infinity of life where I am, all is perfect, whole, and complete. And maybe, just maybe, even in this absence, even in this ache, you are not missing anything essential. Maybe what you think you lost was never truly yours, or maybe it was yours for a season, and now the season has changed. What you should never do when he ignores you is abandon your own soul in an attempt to make him stay, because what you do in the face of silence speaks louder to your spirit than any message you could send. The choice isn't between hearing from him or not. The real choice is, who do you become while you wait, or while you walk away? Lise Bourbeau reminds us that these moments are portals. They bring us back to the oldest wound, the one of not being chosen. But now you get to choose differently. Now, you get to choose yourself. Maybe he comes back. Maybe he doesn't. But what matters most is this, that you don't leave you, that you don't disappear just because someone else did. If this conversation touched a place in you that's been waiting to be seen, I invite you to subscribe and join this journey of emotional truth and spiritual remembrance. And if your heart is ready for the next step, click the video that's appearing now on your screen. It's waiting with more wisdom, more softness, and more of the healing your soul deserves.